welcome to another edition of Willow World. My name's Joshua Ridley, the CEO and co-founder of Willow. I'm joined today by Zoltan Maklary. Zoltan is based in Melbourne, just coming out of 7 months of lockdown, been hit by the coronavirus, still working from home. Zoltan is leading one of Australia's largest infrastructure projects. It's great to have you here on the show today, Zoltan.
Great to be here, Josh. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure. What is your role on the North East Link project, which we'll call NELP, Zoltan?
Yes, NELP's a good acronym for it. My role essentially is looking after the longer term interests of the project in terms of what will be delivered for operations. And a key part of that is the technology that we'll be introducing as part of the project. And
in terms of this project, I mentioned it's a huge project. How big is it? Like how many kilometres or miles is it? What does it cost? What will it involve?
Yeah, it is a very, very large project. In fact, it's the largest road infrastructure project that this state has ever delivered. In total, it's worth about 17 billion Australian dollars. And within that, we're building a 6-kilometre tunnel that costs in the order of about $9 billion, and then upgrading an extensive set of freeways that will connect into the tunnel. The actual project, the purpose of the project is to complete Melbourne's orbital ring road. This is the missing link, as we call it, and will connect freeways to the north of Melbourne and freeways to the east with a tunnel. So it's a big step forward for this city and will improve people's lives and help the economy.
And Zol, where's the project up to today, as at the end of November 2020?
We're at the stage of procuring the first element of the project, which is the tunnel part. This will be delivered under a public-private partnership arrangement, and we're just going through I suppose the final stages of procurement. We'll be doing evaluation in early 2021, and then awarding the contract around April of next year.
And Zol, previous to the NELP project, you've worked in infrastructure. What aspects of the industry have you covered in your career pre-NELP?
I've been in infrastructure now for 20 years. During that time, I spent about half of that time, in fact, working for an organisation called Transurban. Now, Transurban's a global toll road company. I joined them when they had just won their first project, which was here in Melbourne, to build what's called the CityLink project here in Melbourne. So I spent, as I said, about 10 years or so with them, helping them get that road up and running operationally, running the tunnel for them in terms of the various contracts and the technology, the tolling systems and so forth. Subsequent to that, I've been involved in other major projects here in Melbourne, in Sydney and in Brisbane. But I suppose for me, what I bring to the table actually came from my previous career. I had a career prior to joining the infrastructure world in aerospace.
Right.
And in that world, technology is the heart of aerospace.
Yes.
So I learned a lot of lessons about how not to do things in that space, and hopefully in this world we're doing them the right way.
And it's a very interesting career that you've had, Zol, particularly coming from that aerospace background and then into toll roads. Just staying on toll roads, how would you say Australia compares on a global scale when it comes to the 20 years you've had in toll roads?
Oh, look, I think Australia's a leader in this space, particularly in a technology to do with toll roads, things like cashless roads. Australia is one of the first countries in the world to adopt fully cashless roads. But yeah, I mean, it's more than, I suppose, just the tolling. Delivering a large piece of infrastructure like we're going to here on North East Link involves many pieces. And this project is going to take about 6 to 7 years to deliver this project. So we're talking a pretty long time frame.
Yes. Well, infrastructure, as you're well aware, of course, like aerospace, is deceptively complex, and there's so much that goes into standing up a project and running it efficiently, as you would be well aware. So would you say to our listeners are the major challenges in complex project delivery that people often underestimate?
Look, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is interfaces are a big area, and yes, we have the technical interfaces of connecting a road to another piece of road, but in a system sense, there's a lot of systems that we put into these roads these days. It's quite technology technology rich, I should say. Yet there is risk as well, but yeah, technology rich. That sort of sits under the skin. People using these roads, driving down them, and particularly tunnels, you don't see that. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of technology. And the key part in building these is making sure that we get our requirements right up front, and that we adopt the latest in the development of these types of technologies whilst we're delivering them, just to make sure that these interfaces at the end of the day don't trip us up. So I would say that's probably the key risk. And obviously the people factor comes into it as well. So it's technical interfaces and people interfaces. You've got to bring them together in a meaningful and successful way.
Just in terms of just building on that, in terms of these technical interfaces, what would be a good example of how technology makes those interfaces more rich or more collaborative or similar?
Well, I suppose one aspect of this project is that we are going to this particular road will not only be built under a PPP, it will be operated. So it'll be operated by a private operator. Now that private operator has to integrate and work with the state government's transport department.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So on a day-to-day basis, they've got to operate this road as if it was one. Now the enabler behind that is technology. There's what we're calling a system-to-system interface that will be developed for this particular project. And that technology is new and unique to this project. There's something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, you make a great point. And we're seeing this all over the world where owners of infrastructure and real assets generally that really are looking for that end in mind are showing leadership with respect to mandating outcomes rather than leaving it up to the supply chain to come up with their own. And so I would agree with you, that's a very big step forward. If I was to sort of roll it further forward to say, well, what is the idea of utopia for you in terms of technology? If you were to be very proud of what you achieved in 7 years from now when you see that tunnel built, what are some of the things that you would go, yes, we've achieved our goal?
Yeah, I think a really, really important legacy for me is that digital twin. It's making sure that as we're building this and we're testing it and bringing it together within this sort of asset information model, which will be information rich and based on some really key processes and technology and the things that Willow bring to the table for us. Moving that into the asset information model, moving that into a space where it'll be used day to day, and not only used day to day, but kept up to date. Because this particular asset for the state will be under this private ownership for about 25 years. After that, it'll be transferred back into the state ownership. So what we want to make sure is that at the end of that 25 years, what we get back is the digital twin and still the single source of truth.
Yes, and so all of these new technologies that you talk about, whether it's, car counting apps or whether it's other technologies with regards to servicing tunnels and replacing equipment, we obviously want to make sure that whatever's built as the underlying technology is future ready for these innovations, as you point out. Thinking through this as well, how far do you think we are from a truly smart city? Like what would you say are the key core facets of moving into that smart city space, which I know has been talked about for 20 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because different people have different sort of ideas about what a smart city looks like. For me, yes, we have the whole mobility as a service aspect to a smart city where people can just dial up how to get from A to B and choose whatever that means that may be, the most efficient, the cheapest, the greenest, whatever it may be. But underlying that is what we're trying to build here with our digital twin, because the information contained within that digital twin twin is not only just the technical and the engineering bits and pieces that we've got to maintain and keep going, but it's what's the living part of the asset, what's happening on the asset day to day, the traffic that's travelling through it, the incidents, the congestion, and bearing in mind that what we're building here is only part of a network. We
Right.
just,
Yes.
yes, it's
Yes.
going to be about 6-kilometre tunnel and 17 kilometres of upgraded roads and so forth, but it is part of Melbourne's whole network. So to me, the smart part about this is how we integrate that into the broader way that people want to move around Melbourne. I mean, in our case, obviously, particularly with respect to roads.
Yeah, it's wonderful having the opportunity to be involved in such a transformational project for Melbourne. And as you say, there's been a lot of talk about smart cities, but it takes the leadership on projects such as this to say, actually, we're not going just to do it the same way as what we did it before, because that's what we did before, but to say, you know what, we're going to move forward and do things differently, more progressively. And perhaps that aerospace background that you've had has inspired you in some ways to do that here. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to sit alongside you and lead that out for Melbourne, but also for Australia and the rest of the world. Zoltan, it's been an interesting year. You said to me a few days ago that you've spent the better part of 7 months with the white wall behind you and the Bose headphones on. And what would you say to those younger people that are dialing into this call about leadership in a crisis that we've been through? What are some of the things that you've learnt?
Oh, it's a very good question. I mean, for me, leadership in a crisis isn't necessarily that different from leadership at any other time. Because what I tend to rely on is, well, how would I deal with this particular crisis in my normal day-to-day dealings, right? And I take that context and apply it to the crisis. So it's not necessarily about doing anything differently. It's just making sure that what we would do on a daily basis, we're adjusting and applying to the way we deal with it in this particular situation. Working from home, for most of us has been quite a positive experience. Yes, it's left a gap for us in terms of going in the office and interacting on a day-to-day basis. That will come back. But really, I think the crisis has been an opportunity. It's demonstrated, and particularly for us, because we've been working with our proponents on designs, and we've been able to interact with them using the virtual technology and the digital models and so forth that, maybe even a couple of years ago we couldn't have done. So, this opportunity to leverage the technology, the digital engineering aspects has really moved us forward. So I think there's a lot of positives that's come out of it.
And one last question for you on that theme. We've got friends and customers and our own employees that are having to go into a second or a third wave. You've been in Melbourne, I live in Sydney, so I haven't had to experience a second wave, fingers crossed yet. But what would you say to them in terms of, you had 6 weeks and I think it's been, several months now on a second wave. Would there be anything you'd say to them in terms of, encouragement or what you've learnt?
I think probably on a personal level, it sort of made me, appreciate what we have in our lives, our families and the homes we live in, and the local parks have been really, really important for Melbourne these days. We're lucky. We got a dog late last year, and taking him for walks, so he's really happy.
It's good.
But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting, and we've learned a lot about each other in the home, good and bad. And now I suppose coming out of it, we're really appreciating the opportunity to go to the restaurant, to go to the cafe and sit down and have brunch and stuff. So we appreciate those other things in life that little bit more than what we probably took for granted beforehand. So yeah, it's out of bad things, good things come too.
Yeah, great outlook, and I think you're spot on looking at the good things in life and not gloss over the restaurants and the cafes and the opportunities that you have to experience other people in cities. So truly looking forward to Melbourne coming back to life. Boxing Day test hopefully goes ahead, and all those amazing things that we love about Melbourne, Victoria will come back into vogue. Well, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you, Zol, for joining us today on Willow World. It's been a true pleasure to be part of your journey and to be working with you on this transformational project for Australia and the world.
Well, thank you, Josh, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to share my experiences.
Thanks for tuning into Willow World. You can watch all our past editions on Willow's Vimeo page. Visit our website for more information about how you can know your world.